Hi, I'm Smourse, and this is Smourse World History, and today we're going to be talking about the Greeks. Oh, Mr. Shmeen, I know all about the Greeks. Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, and Percy and Annabeth. We get it, me from the past, who read the Percy Jackson series 5 years ago. Shut up. But we're not talking about the critically acclaimed and well-loved children's series by Rick Riordan. Today we're actually going to be talking about Greek history. But instead of talking about their wars with Persia or between their city-states, I'm going to be talking about the part that had the biggest impact on human history, their culture. Let's start with their politics. As we all know, the Greeks invented democracy, everyone had an equal say, and it was all perfect. Except, no, not really. It's true, democracy was invented in Athens, and all citizens were allowed to participate, but the definition of citizen was pretty narrow, limited to a person who isn't a slave, foreigner, or a woman. So, not exactly equal. Furthermore, aristocrats were the only people who were allowed to participate in politics, because they were the only ones who had enough time and resources to attend the general assemblies. And Greek democracy wasn't even a democracy as we know it. Elected officials were chosen by lot rather than popular vote. And most importantly, the preferred political system in Greece wasn't democracy, it was aristocratic assembly. The Greeks had more faith in the wealthy elite to run their government than the common man. And maybe that's one more way American and Greek politics are alike. The Greeks created democracy, but they did not create a significant, lasting religion. They had stories of gods and goddesses, but these figures were meant to represent aspects of human life. So let's go to the thought bubble. The gods were capricious, vengeful, and had many affairs with humans, other gods, nymphs, literally you name it. The Greeks had ceremonies and rituals to honor these gods, and many temples and stories dedicated to them. But there wasn't much of a focus on spiritualism. This caused the people of Greece to feel unsatisfied and looking for some kind of moral comfort, and thus we saw the birth of philosophy. Greek philosophers are some of the most well-known throughout history: Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, and Diogenes. Oh, it's time for the open letter? Let's see what's in the secret hand. Thank you, hand. Oh, it's a man. An open letter to Diogenes. Dear Diogenes, you were born in Sinope, but most of our stories of you come from Athens. As a member of the Cynic school of philosophy, you were described by Plato as a Socrates gone mad. Sadly, you are one of the least well-known philosophers, which is truly a tragedy. You were quite a harsh critic of Plato, and when he described a human being as a featherless biped, you ran into his lecture hall with a plucked pheasant, and screamed, "Here is Plato's man." But my favorite quote from you, Diogenes, is, "In a rich man's house, there is no place to spit but his face." Your philosophy had humor and some truly universal truths. You were homeless, penniless, often found urinating in the streets, and called Diogenes the dog, which you actually embraced, and I think you had the right idea. Best wishes, Shmeen. Philosophy gave the Greeks the meaning they'd been missing, and college kids an answer to the question, what major will make sure I make absolutely no money for the rest of my life? One of the most well-known philosophers gave us a method we've been using for thousands of years, the Socratic method, created by, get this, Socrates. The Socratic method states that one must question everything they are told. He taught this to many students in his lifetime, but his ideas and techniques got him killed by the Athenian government. Seems that governments don't like having subjects that are non-compliant. In Greek culture, rational thinking was greater than spirituality, and this will become important later. The Greeks like rationality, and they also like science. Sadly, liking something doesn't really mean you're great at it. Greek astronomers like Ptolemy thought that the sun revolved around the Earth, but contemporary astronomers in India were already calculating the Earth's circumference. A for effort, I guess. Greek scientists trying to find the logic and rationality in natural patterns, which made them particularly great at geometry. Thanks to Euclid and Pythagoras, who discovered and recorded many theorems, students around the globe are cursing out every single right triangle they see, including myself. Overall, Greek scientists were not as great as we seem to remember them, so why do we have such a rose-colored view of their achievements? Could it be something like maybe a Western bias that has overinflated nearly every Greek and Roman achievement? Maybe. At least one thing the Greeks were good at is art and literature. The art and literature at the time portrayed Greek values and often used gods to explore the human condition. Most art depicted the human form in very realistic ways, and pottery reflected daily life, and sometimes myths about the gods. They also utilized proportions and patterns, which showed their advancements in geometry. Many Greek literary works were burned with the Library of Alexandria, but we still have great plays and poems by these writers. The Iliad and the Odyssey by Homer, Oedipus Rex and Antigone by Sophocles, and many poems by a lesser-named female poet named Sappho from the island of Lesbos. Sappho's poetry and Homer's Iliad can both be interpreted as depicting gay relationships, showing that progression is not always a straight line, and what was fine like 2,000 years ago was taboo 200 years ago. Of course, the Greeks also had their iconic architecture. With Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns, their styles are seen all over the globe, especially in the White House, the Capitol building, the Department of Agriculture, essentially any building in Washington, D.C. But why does this matter? Well, why does anything matter, first of all? Well, Greek culture had a recurring spikes in popularity. This can be attributed to Arab and Muslim scholars who preserved and improved upon Greek findings. This served as the basis for mathematical and scientific improvements. Essentially, we were able to land on the moon because people thousands of years ago thought about triangles a lot. That's why I think it matters. And then, in 15th century Italy, there was a rebirth of art and culture, a renaissance, if you will. People became focused on humanist ideas again, and they were blended with Italian Catholic zeal. There was an outburst of art, literature, sculpture, architecture, and politics inspired by Greco-Roman themes. However, these were only available to the upper class, much like how Greek democracy and philosophy were only available to the aristocrats at the time. The ideas and styles brought forth in the Renaissance led to the Enlightenment. Enlightenment thinkers believed that the scientific method could be applied to human behavior. While the Renaissance resulted in an outpouring of art, the Enlightenment resulted in new philosophical and political ideas. In the 17th and 18th century, artists used these ideas in a movement known as neoclassicism. They were inspired by the rationality of the Greeks and used their art to support the revolutions that were taking place in America and France. The ideas of the Enlightenment were also the basis of said revolutions. So, without the Greeks, there would be no America, no France, no modern world, and no geometry. So, maybe Greek culture isn't as unequivocally good as what Westerners like to believe. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to be awesome!